Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone. This is really awesome because we actually don't live in the same place.
No.
At all. We don't even live on the same
continent
no. Or side of the world.
No.
I'm Hanna Boëthius, and I'm in Zurich. We're in my home in Zurich right now. And Rachel from yogafordiabetesblog.com is here as my wonderful guest. And where do you live?
Well, I live between Australia and South Africa. And I come to Zurich to teach yoga. So we kind of knew that we were going to be here at the same time, and we decided to run a workshop. And then we thought, why not turn it into a webinar so that more people can see what we're both passionate about?
Absolutely. So this is what we're doing. And you are one of our wonderful, wonderful, lucky viewers. And you're going to see some really awesome stuff today. What we're going to do is that we'll go through a bit of our personal stories. I'll go through food and diabetes, and Rachel will take over with some yoga tips and relaxation tips that will help you control your diabetes. So that's the aim of our webinar today. And as you can see, if you're on the live version of this, you can ask questions and we will be able to answer them live for you. So just hit us up if you have anything you'd like to comment on. So as I said, we're here for once in the beautiful weather.
Yeah,
it's been really bad this week, but it's beautiful and sunny now. And we'll leave it another minute or so that people can join if they're a bit late or having problems. We actually just met live just this week.
And we were actually talking about how powerful it is for the diabetes online community to actually meet in person. And I actually found out about Hanna because I was watching an interview with her with diabetes dominator Danielle Hargenrader. And I realized she was in Zurich, and I thought, I have to connect with her. So I don't know, did I write to you or did you write to me?
No, you wrote to me.
I wrote to her. Yeah. And I said, look, hey, I'm going to be in Zurich and let's connect up. And we spent about an hour and a half hanging out together just a few days ago. And it's just so amazing to connect and share and talk about the things that we go through, but also the things that inspire us. And Hanna is so inspiring. She really is so passionate about food and how food can help you manage your diabetes. And she's really helped me too, because I have the same view that Hanna does around food. And I work with that with my yoga. So it was just really awesome to meet her in person and connect and talk about these things. And I feel like I've got a diet buddy.
Of course. And we also talked about that when we met up, that it's completely different to meet someone live than just hanging out online, which is great. And everyone appreciates all those likes and comments and encouraging words and stuff. But it's something completely different when you actually meet live and you see how the other person reacts straight away and all of that stuff. It's really, really awesome. So let's go, Diet Buddy. Let's do it.
Let's launch into it. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So what I want to talk about a little bit is my story with diabetes. And that began over 30 years ago when I was 2 years old. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. My immune system said to the insulin producing cells in my pancreas that, hey, you know what, we don't really need you, so we're going to kick you guys out and we're going to see what happens, right? Well, great for them, not so great for me. And what then happened was, of course, that I need to take daily insulin injections, or now I have a pump nowadays, but for 26 years, I was taking daily injections and multiple. So this could mean, up to 10 injections a day, depending on how good or bad a day was. For the same amount of time, for those 26 years, I had been struggling greatly with just my blood sugar in general, with following the rules and guidelines that I got from my healthcare teams. all over Europe because I've moved around a lot, and so I haven't really had a steady team for all that time. But I was told that, you know, you have to eat this way because that is the way that you have to eat for diabetes. And of course I ate it up. No, it was crazy because what I was told even when I was 2 years old is a lot the same as they're told now, newly diagnosed diabetics. And I'll get to that in a second. But after 26 years of living with this, I did something completely different. I did a complete 180. I twisted everything around, and I went from eating everything that a diabetic should be eating to nothing of what I was told I was going to eat or that I had to eat. So I started slowly, and this was when I was becoming a nutrition coach. And so I started slowly to move out grains out of my diet. So first I moved everything with gluten as a great first step. And then I took away the pasta and all the whole grain things and everything, and then the rice, potatoes, you know, everything that is really, really starchy, because I noticed that I wasn't doing well on them. This, of course, isn't necessary for every diabetic to do, but I still think that it might be a good idea to reduce the amount of carbs that we are told to eat, perhaps. And so throughout this change, I went from the ADA way of eating to a very liberal paleo approach to today, where I am very, very strict with my carbs out of my own free will, because I know and I feel that I do better, and I can really thrive in my life eating this way, which I haven't been able to before. And so everything has gotten better. My blood pressure, my cholesterol panel is excellent. My blood sugars are manageable, and my A1C has gone from double digits to latest, it was 5.5%, which is what is it in the other scale? 37, I think, millimole per mole. And it's been a really tough journey. I can't deny that. But the one thing that helped me the most throughout this journey was to really change the way that I ate. So in short, what are you told as a diabetic to eat today? If you go to a normal dietitian at your diabetes checkups, what is she or he going to tell you to eat? Well, in my experience, it's a lot of carbs. It's up to 220 grams of carbs per day, according to the ADA, which is the American Diabetes Association, which is quite the rigid guideline for people with diabetes, officially at least. And to me now, in hindsight, that is crazy, because what happens when you eat a lot of carbs? You have to take a lot of insulin. And while that works for some people, and that's really great, and I'm happy for every single one who doesn't need to change anything in their diet, because it is, to a certain point, a bit of a hassle. But for some people, it doesn't work. And the official guidelines don't have any leeway for alternative views on food, for example. And so if you're told to eat that many carbohydrates a day, told to take insulin to cover it, and also, one of my favorite catchphrases that they have is, just eat like you would normally and just cover for it with insulin. Yeah, that for me personally has never worked, not even when I was newly diagnosed. And it doesn't work for a lot of people, which is why diabetes can become really, really frustrating and really, really hard to manage, because you're not given the tools that you perhaps would need. This is, of course, the guidelines are changing, but we're nowhere near where we would need to be by this point in 2016. And so it's difficult to adhere to those rules, even though it is becoming more and more, and especially for type 2 diabetes, that fat is not demonized as much as it has been before. I saw that it's been huge headlines in the UK, for example, last week or this previous week, about that fat is actually becoming more and more okay, and it's actually the sugar and the carbs that have been the villains the whole time. So what does make the treatment of diabetes easier? There's, of course, a lot of things, and I will talk about one thing and Rachel will talk about another thing, but there are also so many other things. So these are just basically 2 examples of what can work and what can be worked into, for example, your life to make it a little bit easier, this whole thing, this wonderful ride that we call diabetes. And so what is the first thing that you can do? I think you've already guessed it, but really limit your carbs. It's individual how much you need to limit your carbs, as I said. You can be still quite liberal and eat quite a lot of carbs, but you might want to take away the really, really bad parts, at least the really refined, really terrible things that aren't really food anymore. They're just food-like products. And you can go as low as, maybe not 0, because that is impossible if you still want to be eating vegetables and stuff. But you can go as low as a ketogenic level, which would be under 20 grams a day, and still be okay if you know what to keep track of as a type 1 diabetic. As a type 2 diabetic, generally I have a good quote from a diet doctor, so the Swedish doctor, Dr. Enfelt, who says that if you want great results, you reduce carbs greatly, and if you want moderate results, you reduce them moderately, especially for type 2 diabetes. Because the physiological aspect of type 2 is, of course, different from type 1, where in type 2 you want to reduce the amount of insulin that your own body produces, and through that get stabler blood sugar results. And in type 1, you just want to add as little as possible to have the equilibrium stay as stable as possible. And secondly, don't fear fat. Fat is not the enemy, fat is your friend, and butter is really, really yummy. And I think we both agreed on that. Yeah. Previously this week.
When we met and had
when we even had a picnic with butter.
The butter picnic.
So all the good, wonderful fatty sources like nuts, seeds, avocados, butter, if you can tolerate dairy, cheese, cream, if you're not vegetarian, bacon is wonderful, and everything like that. It's not bad for you. It's actually really healthy, and it will keep you satisfied for so much longer than any carb will ever do, because as soon as you eat carbs, and this is what I will show you as well, your blood sugar shoots up, you need to take a lot of insulin, and it shoots down, and then that creates these constant hunger feelings when the blood sugar is that uneven. So another thing that is really important to mention here is the law of small numbers, which is a concept that was first talked about by Dr. Bernstein, I think, in his Diabetes Solution book, which is basically my house Bible nowadays.
Mine too, by the way.
It didn't used to be, but it is now.
Yeah.
And he talks about there that, the less amount of carbohydrates that you eat a day, the less insulin you need to take. And that will result in stable blood sugars. That will result in less margin, smaller margin of error. So if you take and play with a game of big numbers, so you eat tons of carbs and you have to cover it with even more insulin, and it's the margin of error is so great, because either the insulin acts too quickly, too slow, or not at all, or everything at once, or there's so many variables with external insulin that you can't predict. And so if you take this much insulin for one meal, it's going to be difficult for you to try to estimate even or guesstimate where you're going to be in a couple of hours in terms of blood sugar. So that's why he claims, and I do have to say that I agree with him, that the less amount of insulin you have to take to cover the carbs that you eat, the less you will have these really, really high blood sugars or really, really low blood sugars, because you don't have that uncertainty of the carbs and insulin not acting at exactly the same point of time, which it would do in a normal, healthy, pancreas loving body that still has insulin production left. So I wanted to do a little interesting, but very, very simple illustration of this, of the difference between high carb, high insulin, and low carb, low insulin ways of eating. So basically, I'm going to explain this with a simple arrow. This is something that I think everyone can understand. So basically, when you eat a lot of carbs, so the arrow represents your blood sugar. Might be good to mention. And so when you eat a lot of carbs, this is what your blood sugar does, right? And then you have to cover with just as much insulin, making it go that way. And then you have to eat again because you're starving. So it does that, and then insulin, and then food, and then insulin. And this is what you're doing the whole day. In comparison, if you start with a blood sugar like this in the day, and then you eat something low carb like, let's say, eggs and omelette. Let's say an omelette, simple omelette. And you take a bit of insulin because there's still protein, and you might need to cover for those, depending on how your diabetes is. And then, it goes up a little, and then you take a little insulin, so it goes down a little. And then you arrive at lunchtime, and you're not even hungry necessarily, but you eat something small again.
So true.
I know. And you eat something small again, something low carb, like salad and some fish or something, salmon, for example, or salmon and asparagus, as we were talking about the other day. And then it goes a little bit like that, and you take a little insulin, and you do like that. So you can really then see how you more surf a wave than climb mountains like this, because that is really damaging and bad for both your body, but also for your well-being mentally and emotionally. Because when you feel like you're not succeeding the way that you're supposed to, as you're told by your healthcare practitioners, you feel at a certain point, you will feel like a failure, which I did for a long time. And this is basically me speaking out of my own experience and those that I've heard from my clients that I worked with throughout the years. So those are sort of the 4 things that I really wanted to show you. So that was eat low carb. How low carb you go, that depends on you and how much you find that you need to do to get to a stable point. Don't fear the fat, please. Butter is too delicious to miss out on. The law of small numbers. So little insulin, little carbs make it stabler, which I showed through the arrow, my little surfing thing here. And if you play a game of big numbers, so big carbs, big doses of insulin, big everything, you are only guesstimating what's going to happen, and you will fail more often than not, unfortunately, which is something I also experienced. So for me, in terms of taking care of my own diabetes, low carb is really one tool in my toolbox. It's not, I don't see it at all as a limiting thing, because that is by far the most common question I get. So if you take away the pasta and the rice and the potatoes and all the yummy stuff and the bread and everything, what do you eat?
Mm.
And I'm like,
yeah.
I had that question in the beginning, and it took me about a week to realize that I've been missing out on all these yummy vegetables, yummy foods, yummy fats, yummy everything that I haven't been able to fit in to what I was eating, because these carby, heavy things were taking so much space out of my diet. So in the beginning, if you are willing to try this, it could be really good to try to maybe think of some replacement things. So for example, for spaghetti, you can slice up a courgette or a zucchini and make spaghetti out of that. Or for rice, you could run a cauliflower through the food processor and boil that for a couple of minutes. Or for bread, there are a gazillion recipes online, and Rachel has a really, really good one that I got to try the other day.
But now I've made it into muffins as well, so it's
awesome. So that's, I mean, there's always alternatives, and when you start opening your mind towards a little bit more, other vegetables perhaps, or other types of meat, or if you eat meat, or other types of fats or whatever, it becomes a lot easier to vary your food than when you are dead set on, I have to have rice with this, or I need pasta for this, or I need potatoes. I'm really not trying to blame anyone. I'm just trying to show that it is very possible, and it is quite easy to think of things to change in your diet.
There's just so many recipes out there now, and ways to work with food with low carb, because low carb has become such a movement.
Yeah.
And you can get an app on your phone, a ketogenic diet app on your phone, and that's the first time I made cauliflower pizza. Or I think I tried so many things from that recipe book. So it was just and I also wanted to say, sometimes I end up eating more than I would have eaten.
Yeah.
But I know that it's actually not impacting on my weight, or, that I'm not having too many carbs, but I actually get to feel full.
Yeah.
Whereas when I have to have a thing of pasta or rice,
it's like this
you only want to have this much, because the insulin does affect your, your weight. So you want to eat less because you don't want to end up. So yeah, I find that you feel fitter, you feel healthier. And when you said, you're never hungry, I mean, you're like never hungry. And there's so much more time available for doing other things, because you enjoy your meal, you make your meal, all those lovely things happen, but then you're not, like starving 2 hours later, 4 or 5 hours later, you think, oh yeah, I think I'll have another meal.
Yeah. I'm getting kind of peckish.
Yeah, and it's amazing how many vegetables are low carb as well, if you want to really include a lot of vegetables. And there's a lot of things you can do with eggs.
Yes, they're so versatile. And that's also a really good tip, actually, just talking about recipes. You can basically Google whatever you want to make and add low carb after it, and it will find for whatever you need. So, for example, if you really have no idea, you can Google mashed potatoes low carb. And I know what you'll find, but try it out, and then.
Or you can do fettuccine Alfredo low carb.
Yeah,
they make that with spaghetti squash and cream, and it's very cool, actually.
Yeah. I know it's so that's one of my saviors in terms of my diabetes management, because I could not have been this healthy, this happy, and this energetic if I was still eating as someone mentioned, they call it carbage. If I was still eating carbage, I could not be the person or where I am as I am today. So that I wanted to present something that has really helped me a lot with my diabetes. And I'm going to hand it over to Rachel now to talk about something that's really helped her with her diabetes.
So I was diagnosed as an adult. I was diagnosed in 2008. At first, it wasn't clear to me what was wrong. I was told that my numbers were a little bit unusual and maybe I was pre-diabetic. And so I just assumed it was type 2. And everyone kept saying, well, you're very thin and, you know, type 2s don't really look like you. But I sort of decided that my cells were resisting the insulin and that I needed to change my diet. And the doctor then, maybe like the endocrinologist, maybe a year later said, look, you know, your numbers aren't really getting any better, even though you've changed your diet. And what I did was I went on a low glycemic diet. So I started by changing from white bread to wheat bread. I mean, I was already into yoga and health and well-being. So, you know, I had less quinoa. I stopped rice. I changed the rice I was on. I added a lot of bitter vegetables to my diet. I can remember changing the fruits. So I went from very sweet fruits like mangoes and papayas, and then flipped over into, you know, raspberries, blueberries, strawberries, things like that. So I went from a high glycemic to a low glycemic diet, and then that still wasn't working. And then the doctor said, look, let's do the test. So they did what we were talking about earlier offline was like a full panel. So we did a GAD antibody test. We did a C-peptide test. We also looked at like the 2-week glucose levels, so how things were running over 2 weeks. That was another test that we did. And it all came back, yes, I had the antibodies. My pancreas was not functioning at full tilt. The beta cells were, you know, I hardly had any beta cell function left. Of course, you know, he was saying these things and I wasn't listening. So I decided, no, I'm just going to walk up more hills and I'm going to do more dietary restrictions and everything's going to be fine. Well, when you have type 1 diabetes, that doesn't necessarily help. Eventually, you've got to face the fact that insulin is actually your friend. And I think for me, the big let go was, you know, to go, insulin is wonderful. It's life-saving. And you do need insulin. And so at that point, I decided to really immerse myself in understanding about type 1 diabetes, because before that I hadn't looked. And that was so from 2008 until 2014, I managed without insulin to keep being able to keep my blood sugars. Basically, in Australia, we use the MMOL system like in Europe. So my A1Cs were under 8. They crept up, but they would go to like 7.9, then they would come back to 6.5, and that was sort of going on. But that went on for 6 years. And I attribute totally my ability to stay off insulin to yoga. And it was shocking to be diagnosed with type 1 diabetes as a yoga teacher. I'd been doing yoga at that point for 25 years or something like that. I was religious with my practice. I had a routine which started with sesame oiling myself in the morning, and then I'd do breathing, and then I'd have a walk, and I just did all these things to keep my body and my immune system as healthy as possible. But obviously, staying off insulin for that long, and my diet was very limited by that stage, and then my blood sugars were just creeping up and creeping up. I had to do something. I couldn't just rely on the yoga anymore. So it was like a moment where I felt relieved, and I also felt like a failure, because I felt like I tried so hard with the yoga and the food and everything, and still I had to go on insulin. And that's why I said I had to realize that insulin was my friend. And I've met a few people who've been recently diagnosed, and they freak out about insulin. They're like, I don't want to go on insulin. And I remember thinking the same thing. I remember thinking, if I go on insulin, I won't be able to travel. I'll have to carry like buckets around with me with ice. You know, I'll never, and then like it's gonna hurt, and what am I gonna do? And it's gonna be weird, and what if it kills me? Like I had all these fears, and I just had to break through that and start the insulin. And what happened, what I thought was so amazing, was that within 2 weeks, my blood sugars came back down to normal. And they basically, my A1C has come back down, and I'm just like as if I was before. However, it is an up and down journey. And I just want to reiterate that when I started to look into type 1, the first thing I found was Dr. Bernstein's diabetes solution. I read it from cover to cover. I bought it. I took it with me. I was in Australia. I took it with me to South Africa. I read it from cover to cover, and the law of small numbers hit me. It was like, I need to make sure that I don't get to that point where I have to be afraid of going low. Because already when, as soon as I started insulin, now you have to keep in mind, I'm always combining the insulin with the yoga practice. And what I do in my yoga practice is I have a breathing practice that I do every morning, which is very invigorating and which helps to keep my immune system really strong. And then I do a physical practice. I do 25 to 40 minutes a day, which is the same sequence I do every day, which really works to detoxify the body. So as I was doing that and taking the insulin, my need for insulin and staying on the low carb diet, trying not to go above 30. I think I go a little bit above 30 just because I'm a vegetable freak. But my need for insulin started coming down. So say I started, it was sort of miraculous. I started at 8 units, and then all of a sudden, within a month or two, I was down to 4 units. I was like, wow, what's going on? It must be the diet and the yoga. Of course, things change, so you can't expect that something like that is going to happen to you just because you take up yoga or just because you do a low-carb diet. Because as a woman, you have hormones, you have stress coming in and out. Sometimes you just eat a little bit more than you think you're going to eat, and then that affects it. And I'm also in a situation where I'm only still on basal insulin, so I haven't added the fast-acting insulin to my diet yet. But I think the big thing is that I've accepted. I think the big thing that yoga has helped me to do, and I say yoga because I'm talking about the whole system of yoga, which is to do with not just breathing and physical postures, but understanding the core of yoga and what yoga is all about. And really yoga, the word yoga it actually means oneness or wholeness. And when you think about wholeness, you think about everything being part of everything else. So this physical body is a part of all the elements in nature. Like, we're not separate. We're made up of earth, water, fire, air, and space. We like to individualize and separate ourselves out because, we see everything as perception, as separate. But actually, it's not separate. I mean, the carbon in our body is out there in the stars. And if you try to get out of this reality, like if you tried to get out of the creation, you just couldn't do it. I mean, try and hide in a cupboard or something. You just can't. You're literally part of everything. So to me, that's yoga. It's like knowing and understanding that you're part of everything. And when you have a chronic disease, you can often start to feel really lonely, isolated, separate, because you think, well, why is this happening to me? Like, what did I do wrong? And there comes a lot of self-blame, a lot of anger. You feel like I said earlier, you feel like a failure. And so for me, the understanding that wholeness or that oneness, it's just a thought that I've identified with. I'm telling myself I'm a failure, but I'm actually not. Because this body, it's not even like personal in a way. And I think that's how I see the yoga, is like depersonalizing myself from the chronic disease and just allowing myself, it's like accepting what it is and then just moving forward into life. So for me, when I come into a breathing practice in the morning and I bring all my awareness and all my attention and everything to the breath, then I forget that I have diabetes. I forget that what my numbers are on the meter. I'm just right there with my breath. And then I notice that when I come out of the technique, I just feel relaxed. I feel calm. And then whatever it is, when I prick my finger again and see that number again, I go, okay, that's what it is. And I'm just going to do my best. And I'm going to come back to my breath and come back to that feeling of focus, of wholeness, no matter what's going on. It's all part of the whole. The other thing that I think, like, among the many benefits of yoga, so, for me personally, that's how I deal with it. But yoga as a system, it's brilliant, because you're working all your muscles all the time, you're stretching and strengthening them, you're increasing your sensitivity to insulin. So again, you don't need as much insulin when you have a regular exercise program. You could walk, you could run, you could bike, but what I love about yoga is it's stretching and strengthening. So it's got the two together. And for some reason, when you start to stretch and strengthen and pull things out, it's like when you look at dogs or cats. I mean, that's why some of those yoga poses are named after dogs and cats, because you stretch and you feel so good, and it just sort of wakes the whole body up. It wakes the nervous system up. So it's brilliant for increasing its sensitivity to insulin. It's great for enhancing your mood. Like I said, you just start to feel better because you're stretching and moving. It's great for helping to balance the nervous system. So Hanna gave that fantastic description of the highs and the lows. I mean, what a brilliant way to sort of see it, because that really affects your nervous system as well. 1 minute your heart's racing, you're freaking out, you've got a low. The next minute you're exhausted and you feel like you're just like dripping with sweat because you're having a high, and your tongue feels like fur. Yes. And that's affecting your nervous system. So yoga balances the nervous system. It really brings the active side into balance with the passive side. The other thing that it does, it's great for weight loss. I mean, a lot of people do yoga for weight loss. I mean, I don't really see it like that, but people are attracted to it for that reason, because some people do really kick up a sweat when they do yoga. Depends on the type of yoga you do. And that's the other thing I just want to mention briefly, is that there is a yoga for each type. And also, we don't want to sort of categorize and say type 1s do this type of yoga and type 2s do that type of yoga. But if we look at your constitution and we look at what's going on with your body, so if you have a lot of musculature and you're a very focused and organized person, the type of practice that you need is going to be more cooling and calming than someone who has more adipose tissue, is a little bit bulkier, has a bit bigger bones. They might need a more vigorous practice. And what you might find is that if you have that sort of more strong physique and you're a very sort of focused and concentrated person, you might be something like a blood sugar burner. So you burn up fast when you start doing yoga, and you have more lows. So that's why you might need to do a kind of a practice which is more relaxing and more centering, not so much muscle building, whereas the other person probably has more highs and needs to do more sort of vigorous practice. Or you might be someone who's extremely skinny, even though, and you're a type 1 diabetic, and your nervous system is constantly on edge. Like every little thing is just setting you off with your type 1 or your type 2. And for you, then it's all about focus and concentration and balancing the nervous system. So I really love to explore in my classes the science of Ayurveda, because Ayurveda looks at your constitution. It also has a really long history of working with diabetes, type 1 and type 2. And it looks at the whole person and says, okay, this is the type of diabetes, but this is the whole person. And what kinds of therapies and practices are going to really work for that? So in my own experience with my own body, I've gone through a lot of Ayurveda. And in the end, what I've ended up doing is really just adopting a very simple daily routine. And part of that is doing my morning breathing practice, doing my afternoon practice, and then also making sure that the foods that I eat are also good for my particular constitution. So staying within the low-carb diet, and then also adding certain spices, certain tastes, to balance things out, making sure I have enough oil. Some people, really don't do well on salads and they need more cooked foods. But if you're on a low carb diet, that means cooked vegetables or bone broths or soups or things like that, as opposed to the kinds of things that they might recommend in an Ayurvedic diet. They recommend a lot of ghee, and that's great. Ghee is fantastic, but they also recommend like legumes, and not all low carbers handle legumes that well. For me, they turn purely into sugar, so I just have to avoid them. So yeah, so looking at your constitution and understanding your constitution is really valuable. And you know, you can do something easy online. You can just go Google Arta Veda online quiz and just find out what your constitution is. And then once you know your constitution, you can look deeper into kind of what sorts of yoga practices are right for you, whether you need something balancing and calming, whether you need something cooling and focusing, whether you need something more vigorous and active. So I wanted to share something with everyone because we've been going now for about 40 minutes. So our plan was to stop at 40 minutes, but before we stop, I wanted to teach you a really, really simple breathing technique. And this is for whatever type of diabetes you have. It's a focusing and concentrating technique. It's really easy to do. And it's called the sunset or sunrise breath. And all you're going to do, really easy, is, and if you want to do it with me right now, let's do it. Let's. Okay, so I'd like you to close your eyes. And you're going to take a breath in. And when you breathe in, I'd like you to imagine that you're breathing blue sky from your toes all the way up to the crown of your head. So just in one breath, feeling the blue sky, feeling your whole body. And then I'd like you to drop your chin, hold your breath, and you're going to visualize a healing pink mist going into every cell of your body, getting everywhere, into the pancreas, wherever. And then when you exhale, you're going to breathe a golden, like a big golden egg all around your body. And then, again, you're going to breathe in, and you're going to breathe in blue sky. And then when you hold the breath, you're going to visualize this beautiful pink mist swirling around your whole body. And then when you breathe out, I'd like you to breathe out this beautiful golden light surrounding your body in a golden egg shape. And we'll do it one more time. So breathing in, blue sky, filling the whole body with blue, and then dropping the chin, holding the breath, feeling a beautiful rose mist moving into every cell, and then breathing out beautiful golden light. And then just take a moment for yourself. Just notice how you feel. And you can do this anytime, especially if you're feeling stressed. And what happens is you're actually bringing the sunset or the sunrise into you. And the sunrise and sunset time are the most powerful times to set your intention for how you're going to go into your day, for drawing the natural energy from the atmosphere into your body. So that's when all, the animals are just waking up and the sun is just rising at that sunset period where you see those beautiful blues, pinks, and golds. And so you're drawing that in and helping your immune system. Whatever medications you need to take, whatever it is that you need to do to keep yourself balanced, you can draw that energy in at sunrise and sunset. So I call that the sunrise breath or the sunset breath. And it's just an absolutely wonderful, simple thing that you can do as part of your day. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really wonderful.
Cool.
It's really nice. It felt really good.
Yeah, it feels good.
Yeah.
It feels good. I do it every day, for sure.
Yeah, I might start. I'm very well timed with the sunset.
Yeah, and the sun is going down here in Zurich.
Anything else?
Anything else? Well, I think it's just really beautiful to be able to share with you all this, just a little bit about what we're passionate about. And we're both very avid, available online.
Yes.
Hanna has a wonderful coaching business. She's always there, available for sessions. And I'm online at the moment. I'm writing a blog every week. I'm trying to put things in there that are useful for people to try.
And Rachel is actually an author.
Yeah, and I've just written a book on yoga for diabetes, which is going to be released really soon. So stay tuned for that. Yeah. And yeah, I think that's it. And if anyone has any questions or wants any support, we're really happy for you to contact us. Yeah, we won't be together after this, but
we never know.
But
might happen. I'll put all the links below the video.
Links below the video. And for those of you who took the time to come and join us for the webinar, or if you signed up and you're watching this link later, we really appreciate that. Yeah, that we have time, that we can share this with you, because we're both so passionate about food and yoga.
Thank you so much for watching. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.
I hope to hear from you soon. Bye.
Bye.